We are privileged to be here with renowned researchers and historians, Paul and Nathan. Thank you both for coming. Could you tell us a little about the work you have done?
Thank you for that nice introduction. The privilege is really ours. Yes, Nathan and I have read extensively about Ralph Waldo Emerson's 1841 essay, Self-Reliance. And to really understand the work, we had to dig deeply into the history and background of Emerson.
Yes, this is true. We are shaped by our experiences and the events happening during our time. This is true of Emerson as well. Let's go to the beginning of that history. Ralph Waldo Emerson was born on May 25th, 1803, and he grew up in Boston. His father was a conservative Unitarian minister, but died when Emerson was only 8 years old, so his mom had to work hard at a boarding school.
And she must have worked quite hard. Emerson was in a family with 6 kids, but he was still able to go to a good school and get a good education. Of course, it helped that he worked harder and relaxed less than any of the other kids around.
Yes, a hard worker indeed. Emerson ended up going to Harvard Divinity School and was ordained a minister. This was not a lasting career, though, because he was uncomfortable with some of the theological teachings, such as Lord's Supper, which is a religious painting portraying Jesus. He resigned in 1832, just 3 years after his wife died of tuberculosis.
It was a shame about his wife and his discontent with his job. Luckily, his new career really took off. He became a lecturer. By 1835, he was lecturing in America and as far away as Europe. He must have been popular because he was giving around 80 lectures a year by 1850, and a total of 1,500 in his lifetime. Anyhow, this bought him pretty good money, and eventually a new wife. He and his second wife, Lydia, ended up having 4 children.
Sadly, one of his sons died. It was Lockjaw, 1842. That inspired Emerson to write a moralizing poem called Threnody.
It's terrible they didn't have the medicines of today. It's amazing the famous writers that Emerson hung out with and collaborated with back then. Elizabeth Hoare, Margaret Fuller, and Henry Thoreau. He even helped start a magazine called Dial and wrote several essays in it.
He wasn't just writing with this group. They were really part of a movement called Transcendentalism, a group of thinkers that met at Emerson's house. Transcendentalism is an American literary, political, and philosophical movement that was centered around Ralph Waldo Emerson. They were critics of their contemporary society that actually did social experiments, and by 1850s, they were critiquing American slavery.
That is kind of odd that Emerson was critiquing American slavery because his famous essay, Self-Reliance, was all about thinking for yourself. He even critiques the abolition movement and says people shouldn't get involved in issues far from oneself.
I know what you mean. Emerson isn't all political in the Self-Reliance essay, and when he mentions the abolitionists, he thinks they are overly concerned about issues far away. It must be because the West Indies had recently been emancipated, and he just thought people should focus on themselves. Emerson complains, if an angry bigot assumes this bountiful cause of abolition and comes to me with his last news from Barbados, never vanish your hard, uncharitable ambition with tenderness for black folk 1,000 miles off. It seems so cold.
Over time, he must have had a change of thought because his name is listed among others as contributing to a collection of lectures and writings in a book titled Against Slavery and the Abolitionist Reader, 1883, by Penguin Classics. This book came out 40 years after his original Self-Reliance essay. Back to the Self-Reliance essay. It is really all about believing in yourself, though. He explains that thinking for yourself instead of accepting other people's ideas is being true to yourself and smart. As he puts it, to believe our own thought, to believe is what is true for you in your private heart is true for all men. That is genius. He gives examples of others who spoke their own mind, like Moses, Plato, and Milton. He says that it is not good to take others' ideas. We shall be forced to take with shame our own opinion from another, he says. He takes it further by saying we shouldn't envy or copy others because it is ignorance and suicide. It seems extreme. But he is trying to tell us that if we do our best work, we will be at peace and happy. Trust thyself, he asserts. He explains that as children, we are born to speak our mind and be individualistic, but when we grow up, we become self-conscious. The man is clapped into jail by his consciousness. He thinks we should follow our own ideas, even if it doesn't follow the church teachings. He says it's better to be true to the devil's nature than to try to act the way society wants or to be correct. He states, "No law should be sacred to me, but that of my nature." It seems like you could get into trouble with that idea. But he does not believe it's a bad thing to be misunderstood by others. He quotes, "To be great is to be misunderstood." Rather than following a formal religion, Emerson thinks we should follow what we believe is right without worrying about other opinions, and if we live in solitude, that is okay. He gives enough examples like Cesar and Jesus, who went with their gut and ended up not only being true to themselves, but in the end helped others. This is a deep idea, but his essay has gotten some criticism. Herman Melville's book, Moby Dick, is believed to be a critique of the ideals that Emerson talks about in Self-Reliance and his other essay, Nature. In Moby Dick, the captain Ahab fails and Ishmael survives. Melville shows how Emerson's ideals are a destructive way to search for truth. Author Benjamin Nostis heavily associates Emerson's self-reliance with today's politics because of its influence on people's views of individual liberty. Take any of the latest presidential candidates and compare their economic, social, or religious views, Nostis quotes. Some of their views match, but some critical, radical views don't, and that's an influence of Emerson. Author William Major, in a 2010 article in the Chronicle of Higher Ed, says modern day is weary of Emerson's idea. He thinks it is regrettable that Emerson reminds our students what they already know. They are the center of the world. Their parents and teachers have already told them.
Well, Emerson has many more essays to explore. One of the strangest, I thought, was the one in 1857, when he wrote an essay called Memory. It's strange, because 15 years later, Emerson's memory was really failing. Do you think he knew?
It's hard to say, but in 1852, he died of pneumonia, which was often associated with Alzheimer's.
Well, this has been a fascinating chat with you guys. Thank you for coming in and for this insightful discussion.
It has been our pleasure.
What the